But it's like a funny thing, right? Like this, I mean, it's 40 years ago today, it's the same thing. If you are different than the mainstream, and this is like queer people, back then it was single women, it's like instantly you're a Satanist.
Hi, my name is Peter Knatt, and I'm here with Sean Horlor and Steve J. Adams, the filmmakers behind the new film Satan Wants You. Welcome, Sean and Steve.
Thanks for having us.
So Satan Wants You explores basically the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s and how, in many ways, dates back to a Canadian woman and her very questionable psychologist. I found this film wild. I didn't know most of this stuff. Like, when did both of you find out about all of this, and why did you decide to make a film about it?
Oh, I mean, the filming of this film was wild too, so I'm glad you felt that. And for us, or for me, I should say, I grew up in Victoria. So this is a story that took place in Victoria, British Columbia, which is a little small city who you wouldn't think there'd be full of Satanists, you know? But back in the 80s, when they wrote this book, you know, the story goes that Michelle goes and sees Dr. Larry Pazder because she's had a bad dream. She recently suffered a miscarriage. He suspects that there is something deeper, something more wrong with Michelle. They embark on 2 years, what turns out to be 2 years of intensive therapy that goes from once a week to every day to 8 hours a day. And as the therapy unfolds, she begins remembering all these memories of being abducted and abused by a satanic cult.
And then they record it all, they write a book, and it turns into a bestseller, and it starts the Satanic Panic.
I mean, there was probably no shortage of stuff to work with this film, but was there something that in the process really sort of like just shocked you specifically?
I mean, for me, since I grew up there, it's like we always knew about the story, and they were like honestly everywhere. Michelle and Larry were on the radio, newspapers, TV, and you sort of had an idea that they're connected to what happened in countries all around the world, but we had no idea. This story touched millions and millions and millions of people all around the world, and that was shocking for me.
Mm-hmm. And then I think for myself, it was something, like I grew up in the 80s, but I didn't know that this happened. I didn't know how big it was. I didn't know how many lives it had actually touched. And actually going back and like going through the archive and actually studying like what the Satanic Panic was, it was like shocking.
It ruined a lot of lives. Specifically, it seems like a lot of women and queer men were really sort of affected by this. Did that resonate with the two of you as you were sort of going back through this history and seeing whose lives were basically completely destroyed by all the stuff that happened?
For sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, like some of the earliest research we did was just going through newspaper archives, and it was shocking to see how many newspaper headlines in the 80s were queer Satanists, gay Satanists, lesbian Satanists, like it really targeted queer people.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest daycare cases in the US, so when this spread from Michelle Remembers and people were starting to accuse daycare owners and teachers and preschool teachers of this, a lot of them were queer, and queer men and queer women, and it's like,
yeah,
their lives were ruined.
Yeah,
right?
Like one of the things that like really stuck with us was once you're accused of abusing children, like that stays with you forever. Kelly Michaels, who we feature in the film, she went to prison for 5 years, and the investigative journalist in the film, Debbie Nathan, is still in contact with her, and she said that like, Kelly's life is ruined. Like she's never recovered from it.
Yeah, and something that really struck me watching it was that unfortunately the parallels to today are kind of endless.
Yeah.
One thing that I kept thinking about was drag queens and what's happening right now in terms of calling them groomers and making up these false narratives about how they're grooming children and molesting children. It's horrifying, but it's kind of just same shit, different pile. Was that something that you sort of were thinking about as you were putting together this history and sort of thinking about today's current events?
We first started studying and we're researching the story in 2018, and around that time that was QAnon and Pizzagate. That's when that was really going. And now 5 years later, you kind of see how it's progressed and how much more it's through the culture. Sam Smith performing at the Grammys set everybody off. You just see it much more prevalent today from even within that 5 year period.
But it's like a funny thing, right? Like this, I mean, it's 40 years ago today, it's the same thing. If you are different than the mainstream, and this is like queer people, back then it was single women, it's like instantly you're a Satanist, right? You're different, you're full of the devil. That's what this is, right? It's just othering of people, and it's crazy that this is happening all over again.
Yeah.
And really, it never stopped happening, it seems. It does seem right now it's accelerating in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It goes through lulls. It'll really heighten, and then it'll kind of disappear for a little bit, and then it comes back. It happened before the 80s, and it's been happening throughout history forever.
I hope that it goes back down into a lull soon. 'Cause yeah. The two of you have directed and produced over 20 projects together. Over a decade, you've been working together as a team. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the origin story of this partnership?
Where does that start?
Well, Steve and I met on a nudie beach, a naked beach in Vancouver called Wreck Beach. And I mean, we're both queer men.
You're on the same age?
It wasn't love at first sight, I have to be honest.
No, it was kind of hate at first sight.
And then we met each other a year later at a tea party, a Sunday afternoon tea party in Vancouver. And that time it was magic because it's basically the U-Haul pulled up.
Totally. We were at similar kind of stages in our life. And Sean already had a TV show. Mm-hmm. You were kind of like doing the entertainment beat. And we just kind of like met each other at the right time, the right place. And we started making films together.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing to have a relationship work for over a decade. It's another thing to have that relationship work while also being working partners. You know, you think of directing, the Daniels obviously just won an Oscar for directing a film, but they're pretty rare. It's hard for a lot of people to compromise and work together. So what's your secret to the sort of the working element of being partners?
I think you just said it. It's compromise. It's a lot of communicating. Like we talk for hours and we really dive into subjects and we're able to like bounce ideas off of each other and come up with things that I'm not sure I'd be able to do by myself.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
We actually, we had like a relationship model. 5 years into our filmmaking career, we did a short film about this gay couple who owns an insult diner in Vancouver. And they were together for 41 years. And they just told us, we were like, what's the secret? How did you make it for 40 years? And they're like, we had so much fun together. And that's the secret to actually doing this. So
yeah, gotta have fun.
So I'm a big fan of your previous film, Someone Like Me, which won the Audience Award at Hot Docs in 2021. That film really shined a light for me on the queer refugee crisis and what some Canadian groups are doing, like Rainbow Refugees, to help countries like Uganda, for example, in this film. Do you want to talk a little bit about making that film and what you learned from that and how that sort of, the legacy of that film has gone on over the years?
I mean, making the film was definitely interesting. It was kind of like our love letter to the queer community in a way as well. We were working with so many different, really cool people. It was a group of 12 that came together to sponsor. And so we got to get into everybody's life kind of individually. And it was such a gratifying experience to have these people let us experience their lives and let them experience what was happening during that time. What did we learn from it? I don't know. We've had somebody at an event 2 weeks ago came up to us and said that they had seen the movie and they loved the movie and they wanted to know how they could get involved. And they said through the film they were inspired to join a circle with Rainbow Refugee. And I was like, wow, like that's change happening, right? Through art. So.
And we've had people write us too, so not just one person. It's like really interesting to see, a movie, I mean, I'm a really cynical person, but I'm like, our movie actually made a difference. Which is great. Like that's what you want out of a film, right?
And that was your first feature documentary. This is your second. Obviously, with this one, you get to come and do things like this and leave your apartments in promoting it. What's that like sort of after having had your first film come out during the pandemic and now you get to actually go, you were at South by Southwest, you get to go on a whole tour with it.
It was a dream. I mean, to have a film play at a festival like South by Southwest, you hope that that's going to happen to you in your career, whether you're a director or any part of the filmmaking experience, an actor. And for us, it's like we had from the world premiere there, it was sold out. People were sitting on the stairs, standing in the aisles, and then our next two screenings sold out, and it's been playing elsewhere in the US, and those screenings have sold out, and it's finally we're coming to Canada, and I can't wait to see how people respond to it here. But people, our first film, we brought queer people to different countries. Now we're bringing Satan to other countries, so just watch out.
And what have some of the reactions been, like when you were at South by Southwest specifically?
Kind of the main takeaway was people that are older than myself experienced it, and to see it all kind of like constructed so you can see the start and the end of it is something that like brings up a whole lot of memories for them. And then people our age kind of experienced it a little bit, but didn't really know. We have all these pop culture references. And then we get to see it and we're like, oh, wow, this happened. And then people that are younger than us had no idea that it happened. And they're like, I can't believe that this happened. So it's been really interesting to see how it's affected and touched so many different people.
And see a theater, when you look out at a theater as a filmmaker, and it's all generations, which has never happened to us before, where you see that whole spectrum of people who want to watch this and are so curious about it. It's like incredible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both so much for taking some time to sit down with me today. I hope everyone goes and sees Satan Wants You, whether it's at a festival or in theaters. Congratulations.
Thanks for having us.